guys, and welcome back. On today's show, we're going to go through how to make some cabriolet legs for your furniture projects. So what are cabriolet legs? For those of you that don't know, they look like this. It's a classic leg that dates back before the 18th century. And they're really simple to make, but a lot of people are intimidated by them, or they just don't know about them. So the first thing that we're going to do in order to make these legs is we're going to start off with a template. There are those that might say that using a template is cheating, or it's not real woodworking or whatever. Bah! What a load of crap. Using templates is nothing more than assisting you and aiding you in a repetitious job. So if you have more than one of a certain piece to make, a template can help you mark it out. So what I've done here is I've marked out a profile of a cabriolet leg on a piece of plexiglass. And the reason I've chosen plexi is because when I lay this out on the wood to mark out my cabriolet leg for cutting, I will be able to see through the plexi and determine if there's any imperfections in the wood that I may want to shift my my pattern either up or down or what have you to avoid that. As far as where to get this, you can draw your own like what I've done here, or you could go online. There's plenty of them online in magazines, books. They're all over the place at your disposal. You just have to do a little bit of looking. But I've drawn my own here, and I'm going to take this over to the scroll saw and drill a blade entry hole, and then I'm going to cut this out for our template for our legs. For this particular application, I'm using a number 3 reverse tooth blade in the saw. It may be a little overkill for this particular size of plexi, but it'll do the job. So I've got the blade down through the entry hole, and I'll just go ahead and cut out this template out of our plexi. I've got my template cut. And hopefully you can see this okay on the video. I've just sanded the interior edges here just lightly with some 220 grit, just to take any burrs off and to make it so that the pencil can travel smoothly along the inner edges of the template. At this point now, I'm going to try to explain this as best I can, but this is where it gets a little funky for measuring. Your blank size that you cut the legs out of will be the distance from the back of this section here to, on this side, to the outside edge of this outside curve. This curve right here. You don't want to measure from here to here. It'll be too small. You need the whole distance. So it's from widest point to widest point. So in this case here, you could potentially measure from this back edge out to the furthest most tip of this knee, we'll call it. So we're going to measure that, and that will be the size of our blank for the cabriolet legs. I've determined that the size of the blank that's needed is 1 7/8 by 1 7/8. So I've got the saw set here, and I've got it actually set to a 2" by 2" blank. And I've got my ripping blade installed, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this block of poplar down to 2" by 2". This is where a lot of guys mess it up. The important thing here is that this blank be square. And what I mean by that is that all sides, all the way around, are square to each other. It's imperative, and the reason for this is because if your sides aren't square, your cuts aren't going to be square to each other. And as the blade passes through, higher up through your piece, although it may only be off, say, a half a degree down here from square, as that travels up the workpiece, it's going to angle even further. It's going to multiply that angle, and it's going to be a real mess. So make sure you check your blade before you do your cutting. Make sure you check the blade on your table saw. Make sure that your blank, before you do anything else, is square. So we've got our 2x2 blank here, and it's almost a shame to cut this up for the sake of a demonstration video, but oh well, it's what I do. So what you want to do is you want to mark one line somewhere in the blank that will represent the top of your cabriolet leg. It's just a reference point. So we'll mark a line there, and we'll mark it on two surfaces. Just like that. So there we have our line marked on two of the surfaces. Sorry if there's a glare there. And now we want to transfer our pattern on. So the base of the cabriolet leg, I hope this is showing up, but this little part here, I don't know if you can see that, but this we're going to call the toe of the leg. When you mark your pattern, you're going to mark it on two adjacent faces. So you're going to mark it on this face and then on this face. But you want the toes of your leg to point towards each other. You can see the importance here that if you wanted to make multiple legs, you can see the importance of where this template would come into place, because you would want them to all be identical. So we're going to line up the back of our leg against our stock here, and we're just going to basically trace out the pattern that we've drawn. Just like so. I'm using a 0.5 pencil. I mean, I'm one of these guys that like the technical pencils. If you guys like your regular wooden sharpening pencils, then by all means, use that. It doesn't matter what you mark it out with. And there we have one side marked. Just hold that up so you can see it a little better, hopefully. There we go, you can see her now. So what you want to do is now you want to rotate this 90 degrees. And you want to flip your template over so that your toes, again, are pointing towards each other here on this pattern. So we're going to line up our template again. Make sure that everything is lined up properly. And once we get it lined up, we'll trace it out. And again, you can see the importance of the template here, that it makes for short work of this project. I mean, you'd hate to want to draw these out individually for each side of the pattern. I use a template in a lot of my woodworking, and it really saves me a lot of time. So what we're going to do, just to verify that everything is correct, is we're going to put our square against the stock, and we're going to draw a line across the base of our leg. And then we're going to transfer that line to the other side of the block of wood, just like that, and it should line up with the bottom. That way you know your pattern is right. So here we go. We now have it marked out on two adjacent sides, and you can see that the toes, one here and one here, are pointing towards each other. That's imperative at this point. You have to make sure that they point towards each other. Okay, so let's move on to the cutting of this baby. So here we are at the bandsaw, and I'll just explain briefly the process here of what we're going to do. Bottom line is, we're going to cut out these profiles on one side of the blank. Once we get that profile cut, we're then going to turn it and cut out these profiles. And I'll just do that, and I'll explain more of the process once we're done. Again, make sure, guys, that your table is square to your blade, otherwise this isn't going to work. Well, that was the first test run of that saw since I did a few repairs on it this morning, and it's nice to see it's running well. But anyway, so here's what we have. And you can see that this kind of falls apart. But the one thing that we haven't got cut here is our length. So now we just need to cut off the bottom of this leg here and the top of our stem. And I mean, that stem can be as long as you wish it to be. But I'm going to take this over and cut these off, and then I'll come back and show you what we're at with this. So I've taken this over to the table saw, and I've cut the length of the leg. In this case it's 10 inches. This is just for a footstool kind of a thing. And you're probably looking at this and saying, if you followed along this far and you've got this concoction here, you're probably looking at it saying, what the hell is this Campbell guy talking about? This looks like crap. But the prize is inside of all of this mess. And when you pull apart all of your pieces, you end up with the rough beginnings of this cabriolet leg. And I don't know if this is really showing it well enough, but this is the beginnings of it. Now comes the fun part. We have to shape this now. And there's a million different ways that you could do it. So let's talk about some of those. Okay, so now we've got this thing right here. And the edges are square. It's not very elegant. It's not very anything. It's actually kind of ugly. But it does have the initial shape. Now, the point here is that now we have to round off all of these sharp edges. And there's many different ways, as I said in that last segment, to do it. If this were a harder wood, I would be using a spoke shave. If you really wanted to, you could use sanding discs or sanding drums, or you could carve it with chisels or knives or whatever your little heart desires, really. Spoke shave would probably be traditional in this particular instance, but I use poplar on this for a reason, and I used it because it's a soft wood. I could probably sneeze heavy and end up shaving this down properly. So what I'm going to do with this actually is take it to the spindle sander And all of these rough, harsh edges here, I'm going to soften them up. And you're going to see how this is going to change its shape very quickly. And there you have it. Look at that. You see that? That's awesome. That is just a gorgeous little cabriolet leg, and I made it in next to no time at all with next to no effort. Guys, you gotta try this. Don't be afraid of this one. This will add an element of class to your furniture project like no other. Give it a try. Guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week with another woodworking video.